Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. We're going to be talking about international business today, tax implications, all kinds of things related also to just running businesses in multiple countries. I'm really excited to have Rick come on here and talk to us all about his experiences and what he sees, and also to give us some tips and strategies and potentially red flags if we're making these kinds of considerations so that we can have a smooth international business without a whole lot of regulatory issues. So, Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dawn. And before we start, I'd like to quickly share a core belief that I hold dear.
Okay.
I believe that we all, that's all of us, have the potential to be what I call an architect of change. In the era that we're in at the moment, which is really defined by this constant transformation, our task is not just to keep up, but to actively shape the path forward. Now, if you look at myself, I started my career stacking shelves and learning the ropes of people management as a trainee in a local supermarket chain in the UK, to then immersing myself in the rather more precise world of accounting and later navigating this constantly evolving landscape of technology and people, humans. So my story really demonstrates the power of transformation and the continuous learning and significant impact that each one of us can actually make. So I believe that every day our actions, it doesn't matter how big or how small they are, they really shape our future. And as we discuss stuff today, Dawn, I want everybody listening to remember this. You are your brand, and every single decision that you make is part of your unique story. Okay, how you react, how you adapt, and how you innovate in the face of all of this change that is happening will define your story and your legacy. So as we dive into our conversation today, let's not just think about adapting to change, but about how we can define it. Okay, because we're not just a participant, we're really a catalyst in our ever-changing business as unusual world. So let's get started, Dawn.
I love that. So can you start by telling everyone who you are and who you serve?
Okay, I'm Rick Ivanovich. I'm a Brit. You might tell from my accent. I'm calling in today from Switzerland, where I spend about 75% of my time. This is my new home for the last 9 months. The rest of my time I spend out in Vietnam, where I've spent about 35 years. So I've been there for a while, running various companies that I have out there. By training, I am a bean counter. I am an accountant. The companies that I'm involved in, the main one is a technology company, and surprise, we implement accounting systems or financial ERP, because that sounds far bigger and more sexy, doesn't it? We do that all over the world. I think we've done it in about 80 different countries. We've been doing it for a while. The last 30 years, we celebrated 30 years old in our company last year. So that's one of the main things that we do. And other sort of systems related to that, like reporting systems, consolidation systems, all of those wonderful financial things that maybe some people don't like, but we love doing it. And the other thing that we do have some engineers for hire. We have a boutique offshore development center with we've got about 350 engineers there. So people outsource to us, but rather than saying, go and build this thingy, what they're effectively doing is hiring our people long term. And they end up being your people. They're just not on your books. The other thing we do, I got into people more than a decade ago. And one of the other companies I'm involved in is a psychometric company. That's a testing or assessment company, whichever word that you like to use. And so that's really to help companies make the right people decisions. That's more about get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seats type of thing. And also we do 360s to help with that people development. And then another business that I'm involved in, which is more a hobby, is I have a small chain of coffee shops. Okay, it's actually an American brand that I brought to Vietnam called PJs, as in this cup here, PJs, from New Orleans down south. Other things that I do, I have pivoted a bit and I've got heavily into coaching. So I now coach people, I mentor people, I advise people. I've written some books. The last one was this one, Business as Unusual. Hence I said Business as Unusual.
Yeah.
And yeah, I speak.
Um,
That's about what I do.
Okay. So I appreciate that because you are uniquely qualified to be speaking on people development and international business and cultural relationships and all of the things that are required to have a 30-year company that is still thriving and in all of the different niches where you work. And I know you call yourself a bean counter, but there are a lot of international considerations to doing business in any other country other than your home country or maybe where you started. So PJ's being an American company cannot or does not operate exactly the same with the exact same regulations and things in Vietnam. Because Vietnam is going to have its own unique regulations and requirements, right? Employment requirements, those kinds of things. So you are uniquely qualified to dive into this entire conversation. So what got you started in doing business outside of the United Kingdom and opening companies and doing all the work in Vietnam?
It would sound good if I said I've always had this great plan.
Don't lie to the audience. They'll know it. They'll know what you're
But
like.
that wouldn't be quite honest, would it?
Love it.
I don't know why, I've always wanted to work. When I was younger, I always wanted to travel, see new places. And don't forget, this is a long time ago, people. This is 40 years ago when I first started working. So it's not like today where you can jump on a plane and it's not very expensive. You didn't do that back then. It was expensive. Looking for a job that gave you the opportunity to work and even to live overseas. Wow, that was a thing that appealed to me at the time. And the company that did actually eventually take me overseas is an oil company. I worked for an oil exploration company, a British one, BP, British Petroleum, and they first moved me to China. I was working in China and I was commuting from London to China. And then after a few months, they asked me to visit Vietnam because they needed some help. I went in to visit to see what help they needed, not knowing it was really an interview, which I obviously passed.
Yeah.
And they dragged me screaming to live in Vietnam. When I was just about to sign a contract to live up in Beijing, I got moved to Vietnam and I hadn't even arrived at the first place. It's not where I wanted to be. However, having said that, 35 years later, I only left last year.
Yeah. So the opportunity was unexpected, but obviously led to tremendous success and tremendous businesses and things.
So what actually happened was I was there, and after about 4 years, I think it was 1994, I was told I'd been out there long enough, as it were, and I'd gone through lots of different roles, upstream and downstream with BP. And they said, it's time to come back home to London, come back to head office where I first started from. And this had me rather worried because since I'd been away for 4 years, I hadn't actually met my boss, who was London based.
Oh, wow. No Zoom back then. Let's just, it's obvious there was no Zoom back then.
But there's like, you're on loan to this other country, okay, and you come back, but I didn't know who the boss was because it had changed several times since I had left. That was one issue. The next issue was the oil price. The oil price back in 1994 was $15. That's a 1 followed by a 5, 15, which is ludicrously low. And maybe some of the listeners can't even remember oil being that low. And so that was not good for the industry. And thirdly, if I looked at the UK back in around 1994, it wasn't a great place to be. It was, you could say, it's a bit depressing. It's in the sort of pseudo depression. So to go from, hey, I'm having a great time over here on the other side of the world in a fantastic job as a finance manager, as a sort of equivalent to a CFO for a lovely company, really enjoying myself, getting paid very well in a nice warm climate, and having to go back to, I found out accidentally I could put my hand up and take a voluntary redundancy. So I took a redundancy package, thank you very much, and I retired. That was 35 years ago. However, I'm a workaholic, so that lasted about a nanosecond. And what happened was one of my suppliers, when they found out that I was actually leaving or quitting, but actually staying, because I thought I'll put my feet up or whatever, stay here and put my feet up. But they said, do you want to carry on doing what you're doing? And I go, well, what's that? He says, you've been selling for us accounting systems. I go, yeah, okay. He says, so do you want to be our distributor? Be a partner? I go, what does that mean? No, just carry on doing what you're doing. I said, oh, okay, fine. So I just signed on the dotted line and I started up implementing accounting systems. But this time I was getting paid for it rather than doing it for free. And I've been doing it for 30 more years. We're still doing it.
Where is that company? So is that company based in Vietnam, these accounting systems?
It's a third-party accounting system. At the time, it was a British system called Systems Union, and the product is called Sun Systems. It's now an American product. It got purchased by a company called Infor. So it's Infor Sun Systems, and Infor in the last few years was bought by an even bigger American company, Koch Industries, which are rather large.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when did you start your first company, not as a distributor, but when did you decide that I'm going to now not just step into the role of working for another company doing what I'm obviously very good at? Now I'm going to initiate that entrepreneur drive, that what you call workaholic, I say entrepreneurial spirit. Which when did you first call? Yes. So was that done concurrently, that because you can't obviously have all of these different moving parts and pieces and be working unless you have something like a workaholic or an entrepreneurial spirit drive. So how did that evolve, that you now have all of these different companies and that you're doing that international?
It started off with signing that agreement to carry on selling the system. Now, it's one thing if one of my friends, who happens to be the CFO of another international oil company, who's a friend of mine, he asked me, hey, Rick, what do you do for accounting? Do you use some kind of software or something? And I'd say yes, and I'd hold up a box saying it's this thing. And they turn up a month later and says, I got this thing that you told me about. Can you help me install it? Okay. And yeah, I used to do that for a few beers over the weekend, as one does. And so now, having signed a contract with a vendor, I needed to now do this. So first step was to call up all my friends saying that, okay, I've quit, I'm independent, I'm semi-retired, but do you want help on the system that I installed for you a few years ago? And the answer in most cases, of course, yes.
Yeah, I
So
love
they
it.
just hired me as a freelancer, consultant would be a nice word, just as a freelancer to do some work for them. Now,
And you,
the nature, one of the good things is the nature of the oil exploration business back in the day, back then, is they used to move us around. Okay. So every 2 or 3 years, CFOs would move around. And then I'd get a call from a friend of mine and say, hey, Rick, it's whoever it is I'm now in India.
yeah.
Okay. Can you come across here and do it all over again? And of course, the answer is, why not? Yes. Okay.
And that was going to be my question, is one of the ways you did this and you were able to navigate, you didn't do this just physically in Vietnam.
No, it wasn't I was physically living there.
Yeah.
Okay. But all the work, the bulk of the work was not in the country. It's all outside. Okay. It's just a nice place to live. Okay. So as I said, my oil friends would move and they'd call me up and I'd end up going to different countries doing exactly the same thing. Okay. Which led me to, okay, I better incorporate a company so I can handle taxes and all of that properly.
Yeah.
And I started setting up all those structures. I've been doing it. I've been sharing that knowledge with other people, so I've been helping them do it. I do, and so it's fairly straightforward. It was straightforward. I already knew how to do it. Yeah. the answer's easy. The answer to the question's easy if you know what it is. So to do something I already know how to do, well, I didn't see that as a problem. What was a problem was I'm an accountant, okay? And I know my debits and credits, and I know my accounting, and I'm a systems accountant, so I know the technology side. I know how to implement it. And back in the day then, yes, I could configure a network. I could put a server together. I could do all of that because I'd been doing it already. But what else do I know? I don't know how to sell. I don't know how to do marketing. I don't know how to do anything else apart from accounting. I've never had to do it before. And that was the learning curve. That was the real learning curve. How do you sell? How do you market?
Yeah.
I learned quickly.
Yeah. And especially, let's talk a little bit about how you navigated some of the different countries where you worked and some of the regulatory differences. And even if, let's say, you had a British company in India, the UK requirements and the Indian requirements are probably pretty different. You had to know those international changes and differences.
Yeah, I had already crossed that bridge working for the oil company because at the end of the day, I'd already been doing accounting in China for a
Yeah.
bit because I was doing tax work up in China and helping them with the tax authorities and doing some accounting up there because that's where I thought I would be. And then I got moved to Vietnam and I had to do it in Vietnam, learn the accounting system there, learn all the statutory reporting there. But at the end of the day, accounting is a very sort of horizontal type of solution. A debit's a debit and a credit's a credit. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. The only thing that is different is when you need in the legal statutory reporting, there are some differences from country to country. But at the end of the day, it's still the same statements. You still have to do a P&L statement, a balance sheet, cash flow. It's not rocket science. They're not 100% different. They're maybe like 80, 90% identical. It's just knowing what the little differences are. You have the US gap, the UK gap. Out of this part of the world, it'd be Singapore gap or the Vietnam gap. It's just a little different thing.
Just for the people listening, can you just go ahead and define the acronym GAP? G-A?
Oh, gap, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Not everybody's going to know the terminology.
Generally accepted accounting procedures. It really just means that, hey, okay, in country number one, when you do your accounting statements to give to the authorities, they need to look like this. And these are the rules. In country number two, they need to look a little bit different. And these are the rules, and the rules overlap. But what you really look at is what is the difference in the rules? Okay. So it might be exchange rates is one thing, how they are handled, or the treatment of fixed assets. That's a typical thing. The depreciation is going to be different. They use and provisions and things like that. They're the things that usually jump out as the most obvious. And of course, the taxes are going to be different.
Right.
But that's still the same.
I would say so. So really, you were not, because of your background, intimidated to kind of branch out into international business, where I think a lot of smaller companies or companies in the US may have some pause because they think it's going to be so complicated if they try to expand overseas. And you have successfully done this. And then again, I want to talk about how you opened an American coffee company over there and were able to leverage all of the hiring and all the things and staying compliant with the laws. And by you taking a company and opening up, I would assume, franchise model overseas, that it actually doesn't have to be intimidating. And companies that have been considering doing it, who may have been stopped or may have otherwise reconsidered because, oh, taxes are going to be different. Everything's going to be different. I think that this conversation is a little bit encouraging that, yes, while there are differences, it can be successfully done without a lot of, I'm going to call it tax trauma, is the way I'm going to explain that. Because I do believe that these kinds of considerations do bar companies from expanding maybe outside their own borders.
Yeah, I think you're right. But to me, it's a bit like, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Okay. I see you can be looking at this, oh my gosh, it's an alien, it might as well be an alien country. Everything's different. The taxes are different. The reporting's different. I don't know how to do any of this. Is all so complicated. Translate that into the word risk. Okay. And if you're going to be the person responsible for that and you don't like that risk, you're going to run away from it. If you want absolute crystal clarity and you're a bit of a control freak, yes, I'm an accountant. I'm not a control freak. We like controlling things, don't we? Okay.
Entrepreneurs are all control freaks.
No, I am. If you're a control freak and you want to know it all, okay, and you don't know it, then you may hesitate or say no to it. But if the glass is half full, this is great. This is really interesting. I have some new things to learn. Hey, the taxes are more or less the same. Maybe the rates are different and the reports are different and the treatment's slightly different. I'm just curious, what are all the differences? Oh, is that it? That's pretty simple. What's the problem?
I love that. So let's talk about why you selected a New Orleans coffee company to be brought into Vietnam when Vietnam makes the like 40% of the Robusta crop every single year in the world. They're a net exporter of coffee. They have their own incredible Vietnamese street coffee, egg coffee, and those kinds of things. But it sounds like you've been incredibly successful bringing in an American coffee brand to a top coffee producing country. Let's talk about that. How did you do
Depends what your definition of success is.
that?
Okay, we managed to do it. There's people out there buying and drinking
Yeah.
the brand. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's success. To be honest, with hindsight, would I do it all over again? No.
Okay. And
No.
we like honesty here. We like honesty. And like you're saying, risk and risk mitigation is all part of being an entrepreneur. And that's like phase one. Do you like risk? Yes or no? No, get a job. Right? Yes, open a business. Yeah. So what were the kind of challenges or red flags or anything, or the benefits and the opportunities that you saw in opening a franchise in a foreign country?
Okay, from having run and owned a business that implements accounting solutions, I guess there are only so many accounting. After a while, I have to say, the excitement of implementing or selling the same thing again begins to wane after decades. And I did not plan to pick up a franchise for coffee. I never even dreamt of it. At the time, I was looking for something else. And this is probably 10 years ago. And the opportunity that I was seeing, which was an emerging opportunity, was co-working space. Okay. This is before co-working space became fairly normal as it is today, and before the disruptors, successes or failures of the WeWorks and the others.
Yes.
And so when I was looking at it, I could see what it was. And I said, we can't just have a space. There's got to be something else there. It probably needs a coffee shop or something.
Yeah.
And I happened to be talking to one of my friends who happened to be, his business was bringing franchises into the country. And he'd be on at me for a long time to pick up one of the many technology franchises that he had, IT training or something like that. So I said, yeah, come around, let's have a coffee and show me what you got. All right. I wasn't interested. And then we were just chatting and I said, hey, I'm interested in co-working space. And he goes, yeah, I might have something about like that in the future. And then I let slip and it probably would need something like a coffee shop. And of course, he had a coffee shop franchise.
Absolutely. That was that opportunistic conversation that you didn't see coming. Isn't that
I
interesting?
really didn't see it coming. And so he showed it to me. I thought, yeah, it sounds good. It looks like a good brand. Never heard of it. And then again, coincidentally, I was on a global committee for Sun Systems and I kept going across to the States literally every quarter. And I was going. I was going to a conference. I was going to a conference. I think it was for that in New Orleans, which coincidentally happened to be where the head office of PJ's Coffee of New Orleans is from.
I love it. Yeah, that's not coincidence, but that's okay. We'll let that. Well,
And there were 3 or 4 more like that because I went to New York and they happened to be there, and I went somewhere else and they happened to be there, and
yeah,
yeah, one thing led to another, so I did it.
I love that. So, how do you enjoy doing international business like that with the franchise or the accounting model or the sales model? What do you enjoy the most? And what red flags would people maybe need to consider before they think about expanding overseas or doing business overseas?
I'm gonna park the franchise thing, the PJs thing, because I don't think it's something I would ever do again.
Sure. Did you have
Good.
fun doing it when it started?
Yeah, 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 I did because I like coffee.
I get it. I
Uh,
was like,
but it's not about liking coffee. It's maybe the mistake that I made as the business owner is I did it because I like coffee. I did it because I like their whole brand concept. I
yeah,
did it because since I saw it being so successful in one country, and it's irrelevant, it was the States, it could be any other country on the planet. I saw they were very successful. I like the people, I like the story, I like everything about it. Okay. So why not bring it to where I happen to be?
right.
Okay. Just because it works in one place does not mean it's going to work in another.
That's
Okay.
important.
And I'm also picking up something that I know absolutely nothing about. Yeah, I drink
Right.
it, but that's about all I know. Was I prepared to become the expert in it? And when push comes to shove, I guess the answer was no.
Okay. Now, these are great considerations and things that maybe people don't give enough consideration to because you follow your passion, right? Follow the things you like, follow your passion. And actually, business is a little bit more than that, isn't it?
It is. So maybe I failed to do the proper due diligence. Okay. I had far too much bias in all the research that I did. So when I was doing research on, okay, what the opportunity was, how much other coffee shops were actually making, how much footfall they have, all of those things, which in a more mature market like the States, yeah, you can find out all of that. There are companies that give you all that information. Then in Vietnam, there was nothing. I had a blank piece of paper. So I had to work out how to do all of that myself. And I guess what I was really looking for was that cognitive bias, proof that my decision to do this was correct. And I proved myself right and then proved myself wrong.
Yeah, I call that optimism bias when it related to businesses. We're always, at least most business owners that I have met and run into over time, there's an optimism bias that, because there's a passion and because I have some managerial experience and because of this and because of that, that it's always going to be tilted decision making towards the good versus towards the risk, as we were talking about, or towards the, ooh, that's less than a 50%, but we're going to do it anyway. And we learned from that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But as you're pointing out, where the information's not readily available and you have to do that groundwork yourself. And 10 years ago, again, that what was really available as far as some of that data, not even just from any single company, but just aggregate in the world. When you go back, we're talking about 2015. And people love to compare 2025 or 2024 and pre-pandemic and all the things. And there's just no comparison. The leaps and bounds in what's available out there today over 10
Mhm.
years is mind blowing.
Yeah, yeah. That lesson learned. We're pivoting and we're going to do following a different model. Be interesting. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, to go back to the accounting business or the accounting solution business, financial ERP business, how did that get so big? As I said, I started off speaking to my friends and they gave me some business because some of them were nice. And then they moved and then they needed my help. I managed to sell them a system and do it in whatever country. And so I was moving around as people moved around. And through word of mouth, through my strongest network at the time, which was the oil network, people got to hear about me. And I had no problem jumping on a plane to wherever they were in the world and just doing it. And that's what I did. What was interesting about it? Great. As I mentioned, I wanted to travel, so I got to travel.
Yeah.
After a while, I got pretty fed up with the travel. because I was on a plane literally every month and it became tiring. And it's one thing going somewhere on holiday and seeing the nice sights. It's another thing. You go to the plane, you jump out of the plane, you go to the hotel, you go to the office, you do your 1 or 2 weeks work, you get back on the plane, you go home again. So I visited lots of countries, but didn't necessarily have any time to actually see anything. But the one opportunity it did give me was to see how accounting and reporting and taxes were done in lots of different countries. And
Yeah.
it's just me, it's me. I find that interesting. That is interesting to me. I'm curious about it. And also having to deal with all these different nationalities and different languages.
Yeah.
Yes, it was convenient. We have a common language called accounting, but the when it comes to their culture and their real language, then I had a lot to learn, and I've learned a lot.
Amazing. So going back to the very open of this about being the catalyst and being that change agent, where did you find the passion for taking your international business, which again, accounting, some people may not be in love with, but it is an international language, as you were saying, and then doing business in all these different countries and understanding the world of business across a ton of countries. How can you be a catalyst and a change agent? And why should people strive to do that?
In my case, I have to say it wasn't difficult, okay?
Okay.
Because a lot of this work was just by referral. It's people that I knew moving on. So I went to wherever they were, must have done a pretty good job that, and they were happy with it because when they moved on, they'd call me again. Or if the people, who weren't the expat moving around, they were in that country, they'd mention it to someone else and say, "Hey, we're using this solution. It's really good, blah, 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 blah. Contact Rick." So I was just getting business, and this is in probably the first decade, or even less than the first decade, really through word of mouth. So at the end of the day, if you enjoy what you're doing and you get to do it in places around the world, yeah, I don't see what the problem is.
That is such a British response. I must have been okay what I did. I'm going to call that out. That there's a very reserved way of saying, I'm really good at what I do. I continually get repeat business and retention. I don't have to do a lot of marketing because I'm obviously an expert. An American might say it that way, but the British, you very reserved. I must be good at what I do. So obviously you were, and you are.
That was at the beginning. In the beginning, when it's just me, then yeah, but then me is not enough. You need to hire your first person, and then your second, then your third, then your fourth, then your fifth. And that's when the problems start happening. Okay. And I found that it was one thing, yeah, I know how to do stuff.
Right.
It's another, I got to hire people, I got to teach them how to do stuff, which is fine. I had no problem with that. And so in the early days, yeah, we do these engagements. It doesn't matter where they were in the world. And I bring some of the team with me and we'd be sitting together doing it. All right. They can shadow me. They do some bits. I do some bits. We share the work, as it were, as their competency grows. I saw no issue with that. The only problem is it's not scalable.
Yeah.
As the business owner, I can't sit with everybody, okay? And it takes time to grow people. So the question came is, all right, I can't implement and sell and market at the same time. All right. So I need to bring salespeople in. So I bring salespeople in and get them to start selling. And because I have salespeople, I better bring in some marketing people to generate the leads so the salespeople can sell. And because they're selling more, we better hire some more consultants so we can do the work that we've sold. Yeah, we need to support people as well. So we need a support team. And this is all technology. So we need a technical team. And oh gosh, this is a lot of people. We need an HR team. And there's admin as well. We need an admin team. And oh, we're a company. We need to do accounting. We better have some accountants. So you're adding all of these people. Yes, I can do it all, but I can't do it all.
Right.
Okay. So as a business owner, we think we can do it all because you can. You have all the skills to do it all, but there are not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
Okay. And you reach a tipping point, whatever that is for you, and it's not the same for everybody. Whatever it is, once you hit that, you realize you've got to let go of something. So I've got to stop selling. I've got to stop doing some of these things because I've hired people to do that. Okay. So I will do less because they're also doing it as well. And as you have more people, you have more cost. And because you've got more cost, you got to sell more to cover your cost. So it's, I don't know if that's an upward spiral or a downward spiral.
I think it depends on which way you're looking at the spiral. It's either going up or down. It's like roller coasters go up or down. Depends on where you're sitting,
Yeah.
right?
You've got to do a certain level of business to cover all your costs, cover all your overhead, which is good and bad. If you've got to, I've got to grow, got to get bigger. One definition of that is have more people. The downside of having more people, that's more fixed cost, which means you've got to do more business to cover the cost that you had. Okay. And I think we all learned through COVID, oops, when the business dies off, ooh, what do I do?
Yeah, that was
and that's why. What?
I was just going to say that was a global lesson, I think. That wasn't specific to any one location. We all learned that lesson.
Yeah, we all learned that lesson, but it was far more brutal in some countries than others.
Yes.
In some countries, you had a nice benevolent government who bailed you out, who gave you money and supported you so you could keep people employed. In other countries, you got a big round zero.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to retain people, you know that war chest that you had? You spent it retaining people. That very tough decisions to make. Anyway, let's put that aside. That was a bit of a weird thing. Hopefully once in a, once in a, not even a lifetime, once in a human instance.
Yeah.
We would not want that repeated. But yeah, I mean, it's scaling the company. I was there were certain inflection points. I think it became when I probably went over 10 people. Okay. I can't spend time with everyone. And I can't have everybody reporting to me. And the downside was I hate bureaucracy. I hate that hierarchy. And so I wanted a flat organization. But as the headcount numbers increased, it's 10, it was 20, it was 30, that's just stupid.
So where can people find you, get your book, and follow you on social media and learn more about you and also your software and what you do?
Okay. The easiest thing is to go to my website, which is my name. Okay. Alternatively, go to Google and just type my name in and see what happens.
Okay. So we will find all the links and we'll put them down inside the show notes and inside the description on YouTube. So anybody who wants to connect with Rick, follow him on socials and get his book can go ahead and do that, whether it's on the day that we release this episode or 2 years later. So thank you so much for coming on and telling your story and being very honest about some of the challenges and considerations that maybe entrepreneurs don't stop and think about long enough, but then also all of your amazing successes and incredible journeys around the globe. It's so exciting. And the last 35 years have probably been one heck of a ride.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. Now, as we close, I just want to leave people with a final thought.
Sure.
Remember, we're not just participants in this ever-changing world, but you're an architect shaping the course of your life, your career, and the world around you. I encourage everyone listening to embrace change and define it rather than just adapt to it and react to it. Be that catalyst in your own business as unusual world, because the transformation really starts with you.
Yeah.
And I'm very eager to hear about your journeys. So, Dawn, I'd like to express my gratitude to you for allowing me on your podcast and letting me rant on.
No, it's been great. It's going to be an incredible episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
It's been fun. It's been so much fun.
It really is. All right. Thank you so much. I'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to DawnKKennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.